Welcome back to the Playdate. I'm your host, Kaitlin Hansen.
And I'm Sierra.
Sierra, welcome back. Super excited to have you. Before we just started recording, we were actually talking about advocating for your needs during pregnancy, during labor. So I'd love to just have you kind of dive in and talk to us a little bit about that. I know you had mentioned you switched doctors halfway through and you have this book. So tell us just a little bit kind of from the beginning.
I feel like when it's your first time getting pregnant and you just don't know what to do. So I'm calling OBGYN offices. I'm like, hey, I just found out I'm pregnant. When do I need a schedule? When do I need to come in? And so I started going to this doctor, and my very first appointment, she's like, hey, we can induce you at 38 weeks. And I was like, I am not against induction. I feel like there is definitely a time and place for them, but
For sure.
I am literally just found out I'm pregnant and you're trying to schedule me for an induction already.
Yeah.
And so it just wasn't something I felt comfortable with. And so I started looking into other options. And someone that I had followed on Instagram that I knew from college had posted about her birth through a birthing center. And I kind of wanted to look more into that. I never thought I would ever do an unmedicated birth because I am such a little baby when it comes to pain. You do the slightest thing, I'm like, that was so terrible. That hurt so bad. So I was like, I don't know if I will be able to do unmedicated, but I wanted to start looking into it.
Yeah.
And I had my older sister had some friends who had worked with midwives at a birthing center and then also in a hospital. And I was like, with my first, I still want to be near a hospital just because I don't know what's going to happen. And so that's the route that I had looked into. And at the time as well, I found this book called Your Baby, Your Birth by Holly Day Cruz. And I think she's from Europe.
Okay.
Their whole approach on birth, I feel is very different from America, which is great. But this book was about hypnobirthing, but it wasn't a book where it's if you don't do hypnobirthing, you're dumb. It was, and that's where I was I don't know. My sister had tried hypnobirthing and she wasn't able to get herself in the state. And so then it was not what she was expecting.
Yeah, and I was just going to ask, so you have older sisters that have already had babies.
So when I had given birth, my oldest sister had 2.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. Okay.
So I was like, okay, I kind of want to see what hypnobirthing is about. But again, I'm I don't know if this fails, what happens?
Yeah.
So I start reading this book and it was incredible. It changed my entire approach to birth and your body and everything that's kind of going on. And what I really appreciated about this book, it was read through these different scenarios. This one is a woman who had a home birth. This one's from a woman who did a birthing center. And this is from a woman who did a hospital. And it was whichever one resonates best with you, go for it.
I like that.
And that's what I liked because it was here's some tools if you want to try hypnobirthing. But in the end, whatever resonates best with you is going to be what's best for you.
Yeah.
So if you're someone who one of my sisters has very bad anxiety, she's I want to be in a hospital with an epidural.
Yeah,
so that's what's going to be best for her.
Mm-hmm.
If she was going to try a home birth, it would not be a great experience for her.
Yeah.
And so that's what I really liked. And another thing that completely changed my whole outlook on birth was that she was all birth is natural.
Yeah.
Whether you are doing an unmedicated birth, whether you have to have a C-section, whether it's an emergency C-section. And so to be it just kind of changed my viewpoint because I'm I'm not having a natural birth. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to do unmedicated because if you have to become medicated or, things don't go your way, having your baby, getting your baby here is the most natural thing in the world.
Sure.
And so I just really liked that book and it truly changed my life and every single person that I know that gets pregnant. I'm just read it because I think it opens you up and then you know what you want. You know what you want in a birth plan, you know what you want in a physician, and then you are able to have an educated, not an educated guess, but you're able to make more decisions with more knowledge. And so if your doctor is hey, let's do this, and that's not something that's sitting right with you, then you know what to look for. in other doctors
For sure.
or in other physicians, because in the end, like I'm such a people pleaser. I'm like, I don't want to switch. Like I've already started seeing her.
Yeah,
I don't want to hurt her feelings. And then in the end, I'm like, no, like I got to do what's right for me.
exactly.
And like she could be an amazing doctor for hundreds of other people. But for me, like it just wasn't the right fit. And so we just looked into other avenues and found one that we were more comfortable with. And so I think that it was really great. And to have a birth plan helps you and your partner and whoever is on your like birthing team be able to advocate for you if you're not.
Yeah.
And so I think my husband, I don't know if this is just mine or anyone else's, he has the worst memory. Like
no,
I
that's
could
mine too. I also am like, can you not remember anything?
Yeah, no. So I was like, we came up with a birth plan and I told him, like, these are the key points, like, I want you to remember no matter what.
Yeah.
And I literally quizzed him every single night until until he was able to kind of remember, because I'm like, if I am in a place where I'm not able to make decisions, like,
I need
you need to
communicate
know.
for me. Yeah.
And he was like, okay. So I would quiz him. I gave a birth plan to my mom. I explained her everything that I wanted. And I was, again, quizzing her. I'm like,
yeah.
if this is happening, what do you say? And then she was like, okay, I'll say this and this. And I'm like, perfect.
No, that's
And
so
then have
smart,
extra
though.
copies, because you want not only like for yourself to be able to advocate for yourself, but your people, and then even like your nurses or your doctor to know your plans, just in case, you know?
Yeah. No,
So
I
it was
like
great.
that. One other question I was going to ask you is, so you had people at your delivery besides your husband. Was that always planned?
Yes. I gave birth in like the beginning of 2022. And when I was in my third trimester, that's when they changed to you could have up to 5 visitors at a time,
Oh,
because before it was only going to be 2. So
yeah.
it's going to be my mom and my husband. And so I was so glad that I had my sisters there, because I was having back labor and I needed counter pressure 24/7. And so
Yeah.
they had to like rotate through, because they're like, I'm getting so tired. Like my arms are hurting. And so it was nice to have them rotate. And then I had like a sister on camera and then getting footage and pictures. And then my husband and my mom were doing counter pressure most of the time. And so it was so much fun. I was able to experience my oldest sister, her first birth. And it was such an incredible experience. And I loved it. And so I was like, I would want them to be there for me. But I know some people are like, I only want my husband and no one else.
Yeah.
But I like to have my mom at least as well.
I think that's so cool. Talk to me about like what other things you did maybe different during your birth or just during the whole pregnancy that, maybe is untraditional.
I feel like one thing that might be untraditional, but I feel like is kind of getting more maybe traction, is I did opt out of cervical checks. And that was just because I felt like, things could change in 10 minutes. So it's like, if it doesn't need to happen, if we're not worried about my baby or anything, I am not having any other complications. That was something I opted out of. And then I think that's maybe it
Okay.
that we did.
No, I like that. And then I know like previously we talked about anything that you would maybe change about your birth plan for next time. But in the moment, were there other things that you wish that you would have like communicated or, just while you're in birth?
I don't know if I can answer that, because I feel like I was dissociating during
Okay.
birth. I felt like time is something that is a mystery to me while I
Yeah.
was laboring. I'm like, has it been 5 minutes or 5 hours? And so I think next time I'll just like ask more questions. Like I wanted to be able to walk around and do that. And I think next time I want to see or look into other things like a walking IV, or maybe not having to be strapped up for the constant like fetal monitoring. Like if that's something that we can do, and that might be something I would want to change, so I could like walk around or just have more freedom to labor how I feel.
Yeah, I like that. I think for me during my labors and I think just throughout the doctor's appointments, I didn't even know for my first, and I became a lot more vocal with my second. I didn't even know what was possible, what wasn't possible, what you could opt into, what you couldn't. I didn't know that you could go do hospital tours. I didn't know that you could just that how many resources were available. And so I think that that's something that's so important too, is like looking into that before maybe you start going to certain doctors and during, because there's things that sometimes like don't feel right and you're like, "Oh, I guess like this is just how it is." But so
Yeah,
important to like advocate for your needs and not just go with the status quo because that's how it is.
exactly. Well, and I also did another like a birthing course, and it was like, so I like asked my midwives, I'm like, "Can I eat? Can I bring snacks?" And they were like, I was like, "I am planning on going unmedicated." So I know, like, I think if you get like an epidural, like they don't want you to have
Yes.
anything. But I was like, if I'm not going to do that, like, can I bring my snacks? Because I'm going to need energy to
Yeah.
push this baby out. And so it was just like asking questions like that, or even just, I feel like it's so important to know all of the things that they're giving your child after. And I had an amazing midwife who talked to me about everything. They talked to me about the vitamin K shot. They talked to me about like what they put on their eyes and all these things and like why they do it. Because I feel like there's two different camps where people are very extreme either way.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciated her just like educating me and then like, okay, and then you can make your own decision instead of trying to talk me either into either one. And so I think that's important just to like talk to multiple people if that's something that you're kind of looking into because there are a ton of opinions and just you have to do what feels right for you and what feels right for your baby.
Yeah, I think that's so smart. And things do happen so fast in the moment that with the medications that they give after birth, the first time, like I didn't even pay attention because I'm like, I'm barely there. And it is nice to know like what exactly they're giving you, what exactly they're giving the baby, and what your options are there.
And like what it's for.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have known to even ask those kinds of questions if I hadn't like taken a birth course or like done some other reading, which I feel like the doctor it should be their duty to kind of educate you on that before it's like in the moment they're like, "Do you want this, this, and this?" I'm like, "I don't even know what any of that is." If I
Yeah.
didn't ask, I would have had no idea. And so I think it's just if you are pregnant right now with your first, or even with your other children, and you're like, weren't 100% sure on what they were doing, just like ask your doctors and they'll explain it to you. And that way you can know what you like. And so even if you are dissociating
Yeah. Yeah.
after having a wild and traumatic experience, you're like, okay, they're giving me this for this reason. They're giving my baby this for this reason. And it's kind of just kind of calms the postpartum anxiety a little bit.
Yes. No, I feel that. I think my advice to people too, I had two C-section births. The first one was an emergency C-section. So I didn't really, know what to expect. And I remember feeling after that birth frustrated that the doctors and nurses like didn't communicate with me that that was an option or could happen because when that did happen in the moment, it just felt like that was never going to happen to me, and so I was so completely blindsided and unprepared, and I think if there was some sort of conversation at some point during the check-ins, that I would have felt a little bit better about it and not just, like, so unprepared because
Yeah.
when you have an emergency C-section specifically, it goes from being like a pretty chill labor, if you have an epidural, to all of a sudden really scary, and people are doing a million things at once, and you're having to hurry and sign a bunch of papers, and people are suited up, and you have no idea what they're doing. So I think it's nice to ask questions and talk about C-section during your appointment because there is a possibility that can happen. So
Sorry about
no,
back to this book.
yeah,
That book had such a great kind of section on C-sections, and it was
okay,
like a lot of people, they don't plan for it.
yeah.
They don't think like unless you're going in for a planned C-section, you're not like, "Oh, I should probably know." And so one thing that she talked about is I feel like sometimes women feel like if they have to have a C-section, they failed. They're
Yeah,
like, "I didn't get to have the birth I wanted." But even if you have to have a C-section, there are aspects that you can do. Like you can
for
still
sure.
repeat your affirmations to yourself. You can still put on your playlist. Like you can still ask them like, "Hey, like this is what I want. I know that it's a higher stress situation and this is maybe not stuff you guys are going to offer to me, but like this is what I want and if it's possible, like I want you to bring her over to the curtain. I want to have chest to chest time before we are both wheeled out of the room."
Yeah,
And like there's are still things that even if it feels like it's out of your control, that you can still do to make it still somewhat of an experience that you had planned for with your birth plan and just being flexible and still advocating for yourself. And so, again, I'm plugging that book hard because I loved it and it changed my life.
everybody needs to go read it. We'll put it in the notes. Awesome. Well, is there anything else that you want to tell the people?
No, I think I'm good. I don't know. I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay, I love it. Well, thanks so much, Sierra.
Thank you.